Welcome to the channel. Today's story is full of surprises and real drama. Subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's dive in. Pulling up to the garage, I realized I was running later than usual and knew John would be worried. I kept running through my excuse, saying it over in my head before going inside. I hadn't planned on the affair, but after 9 months, I couldn't deny the thrill I felt with my lover. I loved my husband, but something about Chris got into my head and body in ways I couldn't resist. I'd tried many times to end it with Chris, but he was so tempting, always knowing just what to do to break my resolve. If John knew, he'd be more than a lot angry. I thought that if push came to shove, I'd be able to talk him out of a divorce, get him to forgive me. I had a plan to work on him just in case. That's how far I've fallen in my 8-month love affair. I'd found a new me and made plans to prevent John, my loving husband, from kicking me out of his life and home if or when he found out. I was certain he'd never figure it out though. I made sure we had sex whenever he showed any interest. Sometimes I even started things when I didn't feel like it because I loved him so much. I do love him, really. Once in a while, every few days, I'd get that guilty feeling and want to stop what I'd done, to go back in time and never have allowed my attraction for Chris to end up in a sexual fling. It isn't that I love Chris because I don't. Matter of fact, at times I don't like him at all. He gets in a mood sometimes while we're having sex and begins to treat me like a 304. Those are the times that really give me the big climax, even though I hate what he does to me in the process. I just can't resist him or his ways. I look into the rearview mirror and check my lipstick and hair. I took a shower at Chris' place and made myself presentable, but am paranoid about John looking at me and perhaps seeing something out of place that I can't easily explain. I have the same soaps and shampoo at Chris that I use at home. I even have changes of clothes and underwear at Chris, just in case. I've been very careful to plan each time with Chris. Now, ever since that one time 8 months ago when I came home and John asked me about my perfume, I realized that I wasn't wearing any since I'd showered at Chris. I also suddenly remembered I'd put on some of John's favorite perfume before leaving for work that morning. I'd managed to dodge the bullet that time though, making up a story about spilling cleaning chemicals on me while digging through the closet for some Kleenex our employee kept stored there. John had bought it, hook, line, and sinker. One last look and I got out, walking into the house. I stopped at the front door and looked around for John's sports car. It wasn't where he normally parked it. Had left it on the street, almost in front of the neighbor's house. That was odd, he usually parked it in our driveway. Meanwhile, inside the house, from John's point of view, I watched Emily as she checked her face in the rearview mirror. It had been a long, tiring day for me, and I was tired of waiting for her arrival. Of course, she was late again. It had been getting more and more normal than an exception. Had she been where she claimed she was, I'd have no problem with it, but that wasn't the case. It had all started months ago, and up until it became totally unavoidable, I tried to find a way to get her back with me. I tried everything I could think of with no help from her. I had made a decision that I wouldn't let her know I knew about her affair. I knew that she had to break it off on her own to do either of us any good. Dinners, movies, flowers, candy, I tried all the usual things. I got creative. I made her a special knick-knack shelf, glass encased. I'd picked her up from her work on a Thursday, and we'd gone into the city for a weekend of loving and just going wherever she desired. I tried talking to her about us, but even that had fallen on deaf ears. The weekend in the city had started out with her being angry at me, but by the end, I thought I'd made some headway. That didn't last through the next week though. I finally began to attack her, arguing about her hours and her job. All that succeeded in doing was getting her mad at me. Our sex life dropped off substantially, and then dropped off more, and then more yet. What had been several times a week and at least 3 times on the weekend had become, well, it had been a week and a half since we last been intimate in any way, 2 weeks since we'd actually had sex. She hadn't noticed as far as I could tell. I'd known all along what was going on. 7 months ago, I'd actually caught her at it, but she'd managed to fend off my questions and fire back an excuse about why she'd taken a shower at work. What she didn't know was that I'd followed her that afternoon, and I knew precisely why she'd taken the shower, and her job had absolutely nothing to do with it. Finding out had crushed my heart, but I still loved her enough to try to win her back. She was the woman I wanted to have children with. She had my heart, and I'd fallen very hard for her when we'd met. Now, well, it wasn't going to be all that hard to do what I had to do tonight. I wondered briefly how she'd handle it when I left, but thought she'd probably run to her lover, and they'd laugh at meth imbecile that they'd pulled the joke on all this time. How can a husband compete with a lover who has no need to perform routine honeydews for a wife? How can a husband not confront a wife about her cheating with her lover and try to win her back? Honestly, I tried my damnedest and failed. I'm going to be telling her that I have to go out of town on an emergency road trip tonight. It wouldn't be the first time something like this had come up, but it would be the last. You may ask why I didn't confront her. All that would prove is that I caught her, and she'd be sorry for that I'd caught her, not that she decided ahead of time to quit. My thoughts were I'd win her back to me without a hint that I was aware of her indiscretions. That way I'd know in my heart that she truly loved me. Obviously now, at least to me, that hadn't worked. What she didn't know was that all my worldly belongings were packed in my sports car. I'd split the bank accounts in half. I'd quit my job and taken an offer from an old friend who lived clear across the country. I'd made plans to cancel my cell phone plan, picked up another phone, paid off my old cell phone plan, a penalty I was willing to pay in order to keep her from calling me later on. I had 1 week on the old phone left, and it was a relief knowing that my 401k would transfer to my new employer's savings plan. My cash balance retirement plan would be safe where it was. I was a little upset over having to quit my job, as I liked the people I worked with, and my job was about as perfect for me as a job I'd ever had. It sucked having to walk away from my coworkers, employer, and customers like this, but it was something I had thought long and hard about. I'd given it my best shot, and Emily had ignored my efforts totally, too caught up in her affair to realize she'd lost me, or perhaps she just didn't care. It didn't really matter at this point. The papers would be served on Emily the following Thursday while she was either at work or at her lover's. Am I running out on her, you may ask? Yes. Yes, I am. It hurts me too much to face her with her infidelity. I know that if I confront her now, she'd be sorry, cry, and possibly beg me to forgive her. That's exactly what I don't want. I didn't want to look like some beggar trying to get his wife back that way. What I wanted was for her to realize that I loved her, and that she still loved me. I wanted her to see for herself what she could lose. I wanted her to take me back, damn it. Obviously, I lost to her lover, even though I know what kind of man he is. I know that she won't or can't see that side of him yet. She will, though, right about the time the divorce paperwork is served, or shortly thereafter. Until then, I planned on calling her nightly like I usually did, hoping that she wouldn't notice I was using a motel room phone or be too concerned about my not using my cell phone. I figured that she'd never notice anyway, as she always seemed too distracted to really talk to me now. I don't know what she expected of me. I don't know why she even started the affair or why she is keeping at it. I really don't know what she truly feels about me anymore either. She can't love me, not at least like I loved her once before all this started. If she did love me, she'd never have been with another man. She had, though. She'd been with him for months now and showed no signs of stopping. I'd given up after months of hard work on my part to try to win her back. I saw the handwriting on the wall. Had won. I'd lost. Angry again, I began to work on my fake story, trying to keep my bile down as Emily walked up to the front door. I went into the kitchen and got out a cold beer. I was desperate to do anything to keep my mind busy while I worked at calming down inside. This was not the time to mess up and blow my plan all to hell. After talking to my lawyer, I'd found out exactly what the courts would expect on our divorce. I was reasonably certain that Emily would welcome the divorce since she seemingly had given up on me now. I was also certain that she'd have her lover move in with her right away after getting those papers next week. My closet doors were closed up, the dresser drawers too. A casual glance by her wouldn't reveal the almost total emptiness they contained now. I wondered briefly what she'd think when she discovered that emptiness. Would she feel anything at all? How would she feel to find out that the few remaining clothes in my closet and dresser were ones she'd given me? Smiling as she walked in, she came up to give me a hug. I turned my head so her kiss met my cheek. Not a new thing as of late either. She hadn't complained about it before, and she didn't tonight either. The last sex we'd had was over 2 weeks ago, and she evidently hadn't noticed that lack of sex with me either. Her lover must be getting it real good from her. How was your day today? I asked, not really caring what kind of day she had, but I knew I had to pretend to be the same old loving schmuck of a husband she could count on. It was good. You seem upset. Is something wrong? Her reply was automatic, even though she tried to tinge it with concern. Yeah, I have to make a trip again for work. I'll be gone a week, leaving in the morning. I was watching her for a reaction, only seeing a smile begin on her lips before she forced a more serious concerned pout. Oh, honey, on a Wednesday? You have to travel tomorrow? Her eyes spoke the truth, though, and that I could see. She really seemed relieved I was going to be gone. She was even happy about it. More time for her lover, perhaps. Yeah, it's going to be a long week. The job is behind, and I have to go oversee the construction. I was relieved that she seemed to be taking my huge lie as a truth and wasn't getting all angry as she used to. I knew enough to keep my answers short and simple. No elaboration, such as she'd given me over the last months. That was one of the tip-offs to me about her affair. Her excuses were minutely detailed to an extreme, and then one day I'd had to take a trip out to a job, and she hadn't argued about it with me like she had in the past. It had caused me some wonder. Later, not much later, I discovered her affair, and then it all made sense. We had dinner and watched TV for a while. She was in her favorite chair as I sat on the couch, hoping she'd have a last-minute change of heart and stop me from my chosen path that started in the morning. I held out hope for a couple of hours, but it wasn't to be. What'd lost it all, I could see clearly now. She sat there, ignoring me for the most part, and never once looked at me. It was as if I wasn't even there. She watched TV, but I could tell from her actions that she was thinking about her lover and how much they'd be able to be together this week. If she only knew that I'd be gone forever tomorrow. Meanwhile, watching TV, Emily's mind was going full out. He doesn't suspect. He'll have a whole week with Chris. He'll be able to sleep over here with me or me over at his place. We'll get lots of sex in, and I know he'll take me out nightly for dinner and dancing too. I know that I shouldn't be happy about this at all, but John's trip will be exciting for me. He'll be out of town, and he'll have Chris as much as I want. It will be great. My plan for one last great week just got better. Next week after John gets back home, he'll be able to cut it off with Chris and concentrate on John and me. It'll work out perfectly. We'll go out with a bang. That night, I rolled over and tried to get John interested in some loving, but I found him snoring lightly. He was asleep again. The last few months had been hard on him with his job and all, but it surprised me that he'd gone without sex with me for so long. The thought entered my mind in an instant, unbidden. Can he be cheating on me with someone? Was it possible that I'd missed any signs that he could have discovered my cheating on him, and had been doing the same to get even? Looking at his face as he slept, I couldn't see anything that would tell me. I knew he loved me. I questioned once again my affair, and why I was still carrying on with Chris. Why? Chris wined and dined me, he took me dancing, he was okay in bed, about the same size as John, but it was the other things Chris did that caused me to want to be with him. John loved me, and in our lovemaking, that was a difference that I cherished. Chris drilled me, and at times it was hot and rough, and what I needed. Chris takes care of needs other than sex for me too. At times, I really like going out to eat and dance with Chris. He is gentle and attentive while we're out, and it is as if I am the only woman in the world in his eyes, so much so that when we get back to his place or the motel rooms, as the case may be, I'm ready to pay him back for the great times. Our time has been exquisite, but it's about time to stop it. Lately, I feel like I'm losing John, and my greatest fear is that he'll discover my affair and either leave me or hurt Chris, or worse yet, do both. Matter of fact, I've noticed that for the last few months, John has been working hard to be a good husband for me. A little stray worrisome thought crept into my mind. Was that because he knew about my affair, and he was trying to one-up my lover? I dismissed that thought immediately. Had John known, I know what would happen. He'd go ballistic and probably go after Chris. I didn't want to have to bail John out of jail should he do something rash. I wasn't sure what John could or would do if he found out about my affair, but I was relatively certain that he'd leave me in an instant. Yes, this week would signal the end of my time with Chris. As fun as it had been, I needed to concentrate on my husband and starting our family. It was time. That morning, I woke to an empty bed. He left without a hug, kiss, or even a goodbye. At first, I was uneasy, even a bit afraid, but I convinced myself that he didn't want to wake me up. John is a loving husband and caring enough to know that I was tired and could use some extra sleep. His call that night was good, but nowhere as good as having him at home with me. Of course, Chris was on his way to our place as I spoke with my loving husband. I was going out with Chris that night, and would end up at either his place or here. I'd have my cell phone, and John usually called me on that anyway. John seemed preoccupied during the call, but I knew that his job was probably weighing on his mind. When he had to go out of town like this, he usually focused on the issues on the job, and that left him little time to sit and think about not being near me. This worked in my favor as far as Chris and I went too, so I understood and was understanding of his lack of focus on us at times like this. I was ready for Chris when he knocked on the door. I'd left the garage door open, and he knew to just drive in, close the door, and then come around to the back patio door. I was sitting on the kitchen counter naked, waiting. His knock caused my spine to shiver as I knew what he'd do once he opened that door and saw me like this. "Emily, are you here?" His deep voice sent shivers to my spine again, and as he walked in, seeing me, the look in his eyes made me go wetter than ever. "I'm right here waiting, Chris. Can we take care of something before we head out to dinner and dancing? I find that I'm a little in need." I could hear it in his voice, lust, deep desire. I turned him on. "Jesus, oh God, you're beautiful, Emily." Amazingly so. His hands were working the button on his shirt as he slowly licked his lips. I could see desire in his eyes. That desire was part of why I had continued the affair as long as I had. John, for whatever reason, hadn't shown that look to me for quite some time now. He did me rough. Chris smiled as he watched my debauchery. I could never be this open and free with John for some reason though. "Chris, I love to tease like this." Then we took a shower together. After that, we went out to dinner. I don't love Chris. I mentioned that this would be our last week together too. Still, he had what it took to make me a wild and wanton 304. I never took the time to think, truly think, about what I could lose. I never took the time to really think about my actions and how they could affect my husband's love for me. I just went with the moment and longed for the feel and taste of illicit excitement that Chris brought me. At dinner, we sat near the back in a darkened booth. As we ate, Chris kept feeling me up. After dinner, he took me dancing at an upscale, crowded club. Once on the dance floor, his dancing became suggestive and downright sexual. I reveled in the nastiness of it all. Here I was, a married woman whose husband was away, out with a lover who was feeling me up in public. It was truly the sexual odyssey I was journeying on, more than anything else, I suppose. For Chris, I could be the 304 and not worry about what he'd think of me later on. For his part, Chris had kept up some gentlemanly efforts, and I was thankful for that. At one point during a slow dance, Chris' hands were on my butt. What would John have thought if he'd seen Chris doing that? I wondered briefly. Almost as quick as the thought of my husband entered my mind, Chris brushed him out by his actions. I saw a few women nearby staring at us with what could only be described as lustful imaginings. Of course, there were a few, thankfully very few, that were more disapproving too. Later that evening, in my bed, in my home, Chris drilled the living hell out of me. As he was doing me for the third time, my phone rang. I answered it, motioning Chris to be quiet. "Hey, it's me. I got in a bit later than I figured I would, but I thought you'd want to know. How was your drive?" "Uneventful." "What time do you have to be at work in the morning?" "Early. I'm going to hit the hay. Talk to you tomorrow. I love you. Good night, honey." Chris was drilling me as I spoke to John. I was troubled a little bit in that I didn't hear John say he loved me. I must have missed it, what with Chris screwing me while I was on the phone. Too distracting. My thoughts were dropped suddenly as Chris picked up the pace and started to drill me hard and fast. My climax overtook all my thoughts, and for the rest of the night, Chris kept my mind on him and his tool. For the first time ever, I guess having Chris drilling me while I was on the phone with John did something deep inside me, making me feel extra sexy or something. The rest of the week went by quickly, and Chris just stayed at my home. In the evenings, would have sex most of the late afternoon after work, go out and eat dinner, and then come back to have more sex until we crashed and slept until time to get up and go to work. I was feeling nasty, knowing that me, a married woman, was sleeping with a man that I wasn't married to. The sharp edge of excitement that I now craved was like an explosion of lust all week long. Even then, I knew that Thursday would be the end of it. I was breaking it off Thursday, taking the weekend off, and resting up for John's return home. I'd begin to make up for my dalliances with Chris and make sure that John knew I loved him. From John's end I arrived at my new home early in the afternoon. I'd driven quite fast, pressing the speed limit and the extra bit that most highway patrol cops would allow. I was in a hurry, and I wanted to get as far away from the wreck of my marriage as I could. Nathan, my old friend, had a pretty busy business going for him. He and his wife had worked hard to bring it from the idea stage into the reality stage, and over the years, had written, emailed, and phoned me, bouncing ideas off my head and trying to get me to work for him. Had been to my wedding. Had been a pallbearer at my dad's funeral, and had been a close friend of mine since high school. His wife, Olivia, was a great lady and had a damn good head on her shoulders. I often found myself wishing that Emily was more like Olivia. One could look at Olivia and see that she'd never cheat on Nathan, ever. She had a look in her eyes whenever she looked at her husband that shouted, "I love you, Nathan," every time. I hadn't seen that look in Emily's eyes for quite some time now, for at least 9 months anyway. My new job would be working the programming end of things. I am very good at programming, having been targeted by Amazon, Tesla, and a few others when I graduated. My college master's thesis had been on my pet project on programming, and I'd been working on that idea for some time. I had made arrangements with Nathan to share it with him since it was about ready. It was how I bought into Nathan and Olivia's business. By the time my divorce was over with, I'd probably be making some serious bucks for the first time in my life. I timed everything over the last few months to ensure that by the time that happened, I'd be free of Emily. She didn't deserve to share in my idea or the wealth it would bring anymore. I had put up with her cheating this long for a reason, and now the end result of that patience was coming along. That thought hit me out of the blue, and I had a twinge. I felt a loss, some anger of course, but mostly sadness. I still asked myself why I hadn't been enough for her. I had no answers, and now I didn't want to hear what she tried to tell me either. We were finished. Tuesday morning dawned bright, and my appearance at my new job was taken with surprise. For me, Nathan introduced me to the crew, and all of them were kind, positive, and very friendly. The crew was 14 men and women. Actually, it was 3 men and 11 women, not counting Nathan, Olivia, or me. I was welcomed like a hero there to save the day, though the business needed no saving that I could see. The first few days, I was busy moving and unpacking my things, not only in my new office but in my new home too. I didn't have time to think about my personal life, and quite frankly, I was thankful I didn't have to do that anyway. Thinking about Emily and what had happened over these last months could drive me to drink, and I didn't want to go there. Nathan and Olivia had found me the perfect home to live in. I got the impression the business had purchased it expressly for me since Nathan knew me fairly well, and Olivia had good taste in decorating. The 3-bedroom house was about as great a place as I could have hoped to find, and it was mine, rent and payment free. I never had to stay in the motel but for one night. I felt at home almost right away, which was surprising. Olivia and Nathan had me over for dinner twice that week, and they knew what was going on in my personal life. Olivia clucked over me like a mother hen, worrying about me, trying to soften any bumps I might have. Nathan patiently watched her, stepping in time and again to stop her from getting too upset about my soon-to-bex. Olivia was a loyal and good friend, 1 in a million, protective and caring. She was soon working on setting me up with date nights. It took a bit of time on my part, and on Nathan's too, for that matter, to slow her down. I wasn't interested in any other women at this moment in time. I wanted to get my divorce out of the way and then have some time by myself, figuring out what it was I really wanted in my life. Dating wasn't high on my agenda for the foreseeable future. I got the call from my lawyer on Thursday. "John, we're serving Emily tomorrow at her place of work. It's all set up. The process server will present the papers to her just before noon, so you'd better be ready for some excitement. I also have some good DVDs of the last week too. She and her lover have been quite busy. Hang in there, buddy, and I'll let you know how things stand tomorrow night. My lawyer was good. She was among the best in the city, perhaps the state. She was one of those lawyers other lawyers shuddered when they heard she'd be representing the other side. In the land of sharks, she was the Tippy a great white. Her reputation was unmatched. I'd gotten lucky when I'd been able to get her to represent me. At first, my lawyer Laura hadn't wanted to take me on until I explained what Emily had been doing and who with. Once she knew that Emily had been the one to step outside the marital vow, that she'd not been receptive to my overtures in trying to win her back, and then to find out who it was Emily was seeing on the side, Laura had insisted that I accept her as my lawyer. I found out over time that Chris had been involved in several other marital breakups, and in each one, he managed to keep out of the fray of discovery, divorce, and the pain caused by his philandering. Laura had a very special place she wanted to see Chris, and I think that the devil himself would lose out to this lady. It seems that Chris was not only a predator but he always pushed his conquests into doing more and more, eventually leading them into almost a prostitution-type life. He used women to get more business lined up for his company, for favors to people he owed, and things like that. I knew that Emily couldn't have seen that side of him yet, but I was certain that if she kept seeing him, she would sooner or later. I knew too that Emily would regret ever having hooked up with him eventually. Too bad it would be too late for her to have me to come running to. It happened that Chris' modus operandi was about always the same: find a woman that wasn't quite there as far as dress, looks, or confidence. Never all, just one of those things, and he'd work on them, get to know them, build them up, get in between their legs, and then after getting to be their lover, set them up to work for him. He was slick, that was certain. Laura wanted a piece of him badly, and my marriage was to be the instrument of his destruction, it seemed. The week went by slowly, and each night when I'd call Emily, it took all I had to act like I cared. That Thursday night, I knew it would be the last call I'd make to her. I also knew that she'd be trying her damnedest to call me tomorrow after being served. Luckily, my old cell phone would be history by then. Emily continues. John called me Thursday and sounded down. I was feeling guilty too. I'd been thinking all week long in between my sex fest with Chris. I knew that it was time to break it off. I shouldn't have ever had to break it off to begin with. At different times all day Thursday, I felt like I'd lost something important. I couldn't quite put my finger on what was truly bothering me, but I knew something was going on in my universe. I could feel it. My stomach had been upset, and deep inside, I had the feeling of impending doom for some strange reason. Our conversation was different too. John sounded relieved, yet he didn't seem to want to talk to me. He called and pretty much waited for me to carry the conversation. When we hung up, I told him I loved him, and he just said goodbye. Had I known then what I know now, I'd never have let him go on that trip. I'd have begged him for forgiveness. Hindsight is always 20/20, isn't it? I put my worries out of my mind, and as I turned from hanging up, I began to tell Chris that this would be our last night together. I was breaking it off with him now, so I'd have 2 or 3 days to prepare for my husband's return. I wanted to be sure that nothing of Chris would be left in or on my Bedino smells, no residual sperm, nothing. The phone call troubled me late that night, but I finally fell asleep. I was at work on Thursday when, just before lunch, my whole universe shuddered to a halt. I heard my name mentioned by a man in a dark brown suit. It was ill-fitting, and he looked a bit hard around the eyes as he walked towards me. Emily Miller? Yes, can I help you? You've been served. And with that, my whole world crumbled around me. I wasn't sure what I was being sued for, but something had to be dreadfully wrong. Without looking in the envelope Head handed me before he turned and walked out, I called John. Head know what to do. I always had been able to turn to my husband to fix problems for me. Head fixed this up, whatever it was. I tried to call him. As I hit speed dial on my cell phone, I only heard that John's number was no longer in service. Troubled, I looked up his phone number on my caller list and tried dialing it, thinking that the phone company was having issues. I got the same message. Suddenly, I was scared. I felt a chill course through my body as little demons began to poke my heart. Panic set in, and I did the only thing I knew to do: call John's boss, Daniel Green. Tom, I can't seem to get a hold of John. Do you know where he's staying? Emily? Yes, this is Emily. Tom, you know me. Why are you calling here? John quit. His last day was last Thursday. He took another job somewhere else. He told me he was moving there permanently. Stunned, I could only sit there holding my cell phone to my ear. John had quit his job. His last day had been last Thursday. Had moved away. I didn't know what to do. I sat at my desk in shock. Not only did I fear for my life now, I realized I'd just made a fool out of myself to John's former boss. I mean, his own wife wasn't aware of what was going on with him. How'd that look to anyone seeing it from the sidelines? That brown envelope was looking more and more like a viper waiting to strike me dead. Finally, I opened it up and discovered my affair's cost to me. I'd lost my husband. The only man I'd ever loved was gone. Had left me. I chased him away with my cheap, tawdry affair, and for what? Some temporary gratification that John could have given me had I let him be with me over the last 9 months. I'm not sure how long I sat at my desk crying, but a coworker finally saw me and got me off to the ladies' room. In tears, I explained what was going on. At first, Sophia was angry that my husband could be so cruel. After I explained my part and why he left me, she suddenly got angry at me. Are you stupid or crazy? Jesus, Emily, that man worshipped the ground you walked on. He loved you. He was totally in love with you, and you do this to him? He's a great catch, and you caught and released him. You have to be out of your mind to let a man as great as John go like this. What were you thinking? On your lover's best day, he couldn't be a tenth the man John is on his worst day. You poor, foolish woman. I pity you. I really do. I never knew I'd find out, Sophia. I thought I'd have my fling, John would never know, and after I was over Chris, I'd make it up to John. Honey, husbands will always find out. Always. They'll notice it when you start to act different. All cheaters do that, you know. It's the little things in the beginning. First, you may slight him in some little way. Your lover is making you feel sexy. Your husband obviously didn't, otherwise your lover wouldn't have gotten to you like he did. Pretty soon, you're so caught up in your affair you can't see what you're doing to your loving husband. You have to understand, Emily, John knew. He felt it over time. He dug up the facts, I'm sure. You didn't see it because you were caught up in your deception and games. Oh God, I've lost him. Maybe not. He'll need to talk to you. There will have to be closure. He'll need it. You may have a small chance to get him to forgive you. He won't forget, but he may forgive you. He hit me with divorce papers today. He's been acting strange all week when I talked to him on the phone, and now I can't even call him. I've lost him. He'd never have left like this, quitting his job and everything, unless he'd given up on me. Why couldn't I have seen this? Why did I keep on with Chris? Oh my God, I've ruined my life, my marriage, everything. You'll live, Emily, trust me. I know. You'll live. How do you know that? I've told you I've been there, right here where you are. I too had an affair. My ex left me. He beat the holy living hell out of my lover, but he left me. I've managed to survive. You cheated on your husband too? Yeah. I never saw the little changes in how I treated my husband until it was too late, too. That's the problem with cheating. At first, you're trying to hide everything, so you act differently than you would because what if your husband discovers that you have another man's leavings in you? Later, you begin to feel some kind of power, and that you're getting away with it, so you relax and ease any guilt. You begin to give more to your husband. Later, you start to feel like your husband must be less of a man since you're fooling him so easily and he doesn't have a clue. Usually, the husband has it all figured out way before you know. How'd he find out? Don't know. All I know is that one day I was served pretty much like you were today. He had pictures, recordings, even a DVD movie of me with my lover. Our lawyers fought it out hard. I fought the divorce, trying to convince my husband that I'd change, that I loved him more than any other man, but it was all for naught. I lost everything I valued in the divorce, my husband and his unadulterated love for me, his queen. I took that pristine love and dirted it all up so that even I wouldn't have been able to forgive myself had I been in his shoes. Oh my God. Oh my God, I've lost him. He's gone. I'm all alone. It doesn't look good for you right now, Emily, but if you work as hard as you can, you may be able to get him to forgive you. He really loved you a lot, and everyone here knows that. You might be able to change his mind about you if you try hard enough. Emily, I don't even know where to find him. He quit his job and moved away a week ago. I'm not even sure where he is now. He could be anywhere at all. Well, find him. He'll have to show up eventually, if only to sign the divorce papers. Yeah, but by then it will be far too late for me or him to reconcile. Call his lawyer and demand that John contact you as soon as he can. He may not tell you where to find him, but if you can get John to call, you can try to reverse search the phone number and locate where he is. What if he doesn't call me? What then? There's other ways to locate people nowadays, Emily. Well, find him. We will. Sophia tried to sound upbeat and positive, but deep down inside she was afraid that John had flown the coop for a particular reason, and the divorce was probably it. She felt that John was going to try to avoid any contact with his soon-to-be ex-wife because he was afraid that he'd buckle under and appear weak by talking to her, and then letting himself be convinced into taking his cheating wife back. Sophia understood John's feelings more than many could realize. Her own husband had told her those same things verbatim when he refused to talk to her about her cheating and the possibility of taking her back. He had even been ashamed that he'd let her talk him into an hour-long talk to his soon-to-be ex, knowing that she'd tried to talk him out of the divorce. In the end, he'd stood strong and left her. Neither had married since then, and Sophia was sure that her ex didn't even date, and their divorce had been over 2 years before. Sophia had her painful prior experience with divorce, and now she'd do whatever she could to help Emily with her pain. She knew how Emily was feeling and just how devastating it was to be served those papers. Emily needed her help more than she realized, far more than she would know for quite some time. Back to John. I'd been at work for a few weeks when the call came. John, she wants to talk. She's refusing to sign anything, and she said that she'll fight the divorce tooth and nail. Oh man, why? She has the man she wants, so why would she fight it? Because she doesn't have the man she wants. I've seen this before. Trust me, John. She is dying inside right now because you found out, left her, and then hit her with the divorce. I'm not real certain your actions were the best way to go about doing things, but I do understand why. In the end, she'll fight it, delaying the whole mess until it costs a bunch in legal fees. I recommend that you sit and talk with her, get her to give it up. Maybe she'll see how serious you really are and walk away then. Now she wants to talk? No. I tried for months to get her to open up and talk. I tried for months to turn her around and back into the woman I loved and desired. Now she wants to talk? Sorry. I don't mean to blow up like this. It just pisses me off so much. Well, you could probably use the good news then, huh? Good news? Yeah, Sammy boy, her lover, just went down hard. Seems he tried to force his way in on Emily, all pissed off about her breaking it off with him and meaning it. The cops were called, and as they hauled him off to jail, I hear that some other women called the cops and started filing charges too. How'd the other women know? Oh wait, don't answer that. I think I know what little birdie got the word out about him. Why, John, I'm surprised you'd think that I, an officer of the court, could or would do such a thing. I never said you did, Laura. I can see the light though. Not to worry, I won't ever tell. I hope the son of a witch goes away for a long, long time. You and me both, mister, you and me both. Anyway, you want me to set up a meet between you and Emily? Fine, make it for next Wednesday in the afternoon. They'll meet her at Lakeside Tavern. She'll know where that's at, I'm sure. Hey, you doing okay, John? Yeah. Still hurts. My new job is keeping me plenty busy though, so I don't have to think too much about things. Thanks, Laura. You know, you're one of the few good guys, John. I respect you and how you tried to fix things before they got to this point. Too bad Emily didn't see that until it was too late. Yeah, too bad. Emily finishes our talk wasn't good. John flat out refused to agree to any chance of reconciliation. He told me I'd burned the bridge to ashes, and there was no structure to repair. Our marriage was dead, and he wanted it buried. I finally was forced to sign off on our marriage. I was forced to give up. Once I heard his voice, saw the look in his eyes, I knew I'd screwed up. I knew had never been on this. Maybe had I seen something like this coming before, I would have had a chance to save our marriage, but now, not a chance in a million. The worst part of all of this, I love him completely, totally, and forever. I just didn't realize how much until it was too late. He found a new job, moved away, and led me to believe he'd be home at the end of the week. Yeah, he lied to me. The problem I have now is to know that I lied far more, for a far longer time, and in a far worse way. My life is empty. My lover is gone, evidently headed to jail. My husband is gone and soon to be my ex-husband. All that's left of my marriage is his signing the decree. I'm still young enough to start over, but the clock is ticking, and soon I will be in that danger zone for having children. I couldn't keep my first husband, who I loved dearly, even though through my cheating I clearly showed the opposite to those who saw what happened. I signed the final papers today, decree nisi being the beginning of the end, decree absolute being what I signed today. So cold, so formal, so empty. John finishes my life has gone through a metamorphosis. With Emily gone, living in a new city, and my new job keeping me busy, I haven't had a lot of time to dwell on the recent past. I have had some nights that were long, cold, and yes, empty. I see some silver linings beginning to show up though. My process program is working far better than even I hoped for. Our business is leaping ahead with a growing momentum, thanks to our combined efforts. I found a nice house that I moved into, and one day I hope it becomes home to me too. Lastly, there's a few nice prospects for female companionship on my horizon. I'm a bit gun-shy of new relationships, but I have dated a bit here and there. I hope to get over the nasty mess behind me soon, and then I can begin to look for someone special again. I'm pretty sure they won't look, or even sound or act anything like Emily. That's okay with me though. I'm about over her totally now. Just a little more time, and I'll bet even the looks, sounding, or acting like her won't even get to me too much. That's the story. Do you think John made the right choice by leaving? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Thanks for watching.